So here's a headline from the Associated Press. 2020 Democratic contenders already eyeing top staff in Iowa. Obviously, we knew this was coming. The midterms are over, and that means, especially the Democrat Party, they're all going to be focused on 2020. Which one in the Democrat Party is going to become president? Here's what it said in the Associated Press. It said the 2018 midterms are barely history, but the next campaign is already in full swing in Iowa, home to the first caucus of the 2020 Democratic presidential nominating campaign. In the 2 weeks since the election, potential White House contenders have intensified their effort to recruit operatives who could help them navigate an Iowa campaign. Now, Politico released a poll recently that showed who was in the lead in the Democratic field right now for 2020. Right now it has Joe.
How do they have a lead?
What do you mean? In the poll?
How is anybody in a lead?
Because there's a poll. And they do. Of course there's someone in the lead. The midterms are long history there, Paul. We're already in 2020. No, but in the lead in this, according to this poll, it had Joe Biden at 26% and Bernie Sanders at 19%. But there's one person who was not in this poll who I think actually could have a chance of being the nominee and could actually run again. She was asked about this recently. Here it is.
Do you want to run again?
No.
Wait.
No.
That was a pause.
Well, I'd like to be president.
Yes, that was Hillary Clinton last month, asked in a podcast if she would run again. She paused and said no, but then she said, well, I would like to be president.
Yeah, she wants to be appointed president. She doesn't want to go through the election process anymore.
There is a lot of talk. We talked about it on this show last week. The Wall Street Journal had a piece from someone very close to Hillary Clinton that says she will run again and she could win. Now, do you think Hillary could win the nomination? Bud last week said he hopes Hillary runs because she would be such a bad candidate that would guarantee Trump another victory.
And he's absolutely right. It would guarantee 100% Trump gets another victory.
I am not 100% sure of that. I think Trump definitely could beat her. I'm not saying Hillary Clinton is going to win or anything. Trust me, she's one of the most flawed candidates in the history of candidates. But there is at least a path to victory for her in the primary. Now, yesterday I heard some audio from Fox News. They talked with Mark Penn, who was a former Clinton strategist, and he talked about why Hillary will run again. Go ahead and play Penn cut one for me.
If there's no front runner come later this year in the Democratic Party, Hillary Clinton has a 75% approval rating in the Harvard Caps Harris poll with Democrats, 77% in the Gallup poll. She's stayed very close to the Democratic base. You see that even in her actions during the recounts. And she's well positioned to jump back in if that's the case. And frankly, put forward a very strong showing and even knock out a lot of the candidates because after all, a lot of the potential new candidates really failed when it came to the Kavanaugh hearings and even became, in some cases, laughingstock.
He thinks there's a good chance because of all that. She has been playing to the base recently. It's something I have noticed in recent interviews. She has been playing to the base. But this is why I think she could win the nomination. And I know it's past Halloween. I didn't mean to scare everyone. You do that on Halloween. We're supposed to be in Thanksgiving time and thankful. But I saw this and I was like, oh, no. No, not Hillary versus Trump again. But he said something here, Mark Penn, that caught my attention. That kind of light bulb went off and I said, oh, this is a possibility. This is what he said.
Right now, Joe Biden has 30%. Almost every other candidate tested is somewhere around 10%. There's no clear front runner. And that's the situation in which either Hillary could come in and galvanize her support.
So what was one reason that Trump was able to get the nomination in the Republican Party? Because there were so many Republican candidates running he didn't have to get over 50% of the lot of time. He was able to split the vote among all the other candidates and get enough to win. Hillary Clinton could, I say could, I'm not saying this is guaranteed, could come in, and because the more progressive wing of the party is split, or even the more moderate wing is split, Hillary Clinton could get enough votes to be the Democrat nominee. I think this is entirely scary, but I think it's entirely possible. But because you have that split the vote thing, that also means there could be someone who could come out of nowhere and also win, because there's going to be so many candidates running. One of the things that happened in the Republican Party in 2016 was so many candidates were running that you had a lot of split in the vote. That could happen in the Democrat Party. That could be Hillary's path to victory.
No way. And
then Trump would run against Hillary again.
And we would all go crazy.
We could have literally, this is possible, Paul. He doesn't want to admit it, but he knows this is possible.
No, I really don't think it's possible, actually.
407-916-5400. Text to 23680 where standard message and data rates apply. So yesterday, I was talking about bringing civility and depth back into politics. Well, I found a voice of reason on that from the Republican Party. He's a rising star in the party. We're going to play that next. And we have Orlando's news, weather, and traffic in just 2 minutes. News Radio 93.1 WFLA. And when we were speaking about that correspondence dinner yesterday, and I was talking about why I totally support the author and historian speaking at the White House Correspondents' Dinner instead of a comedian. And the one thing that I said is that I like this because I am begging to bring back some civility and some depth and some seriousness back into the political discussion. I think it is so needed in these times because both sides, Trump is responsible for this too, both sides are not bringing depth back into it. It's usually attack the other side. It's usually, not a serious discussion. That being said, I found a voice of reason on this whole point. It's Dan Crenshaw. Now, he became well known recently because Saturday Night Live did a whole bit where they made fun of him. He lost the use of one eye and now wears an eye patch because he was injured in war. He served in Iraq. And Saturday Night Live got a lot of backlash for how they made fun of him. And Crenshaw actually accepted their apology and forgave the comedian on Saturday Night Live who did that. It was a really good move, I think. Well, Crenshaw was on Face the Nation on Sunday. And they were talking about this whole thing about how Trump says fake news media is the enemy of the people, and how they said, some of the people on the panel said that Trump is attacking freedom of the press. Well, Crenshaw kind of jumped in, and he was kind of a voice of reason on this, and I really liked what he had to say. So I figured I'd play it for you this morning. Here it is.
How is that an attack on the press, though?
Because it's literally an attack.
Oh, I've literally been attacked, so let's choose our words carefully.
His language is an attack.
Okay, so why can't he speak? Why is he not allowed to use his own language and freedom of speech?
Because you talked about this, actually. It's important that we lead from example, that we lead from the top. And the way that our president is currently
I agree with you there. I agree with you there. Style is one thing. If you want to criticize style, I'm with you. Right? But to say it's an attack on the freedom of the press, that is a very bold statement.
By calling the press the enemy of the people?
I don't like that language.
Literally.
Okay, so the style, I agree. I don't like that language.
So he was basically making the point that when they're out there and they say Trump is attacking freedom of the press, he's basically just asking the question, how? Are you just mad at some of the things he has said? Or are you just mad at his style? Or is he actually attacking the freedom of the press? And they really didn't have an answer. It was mostly just style. And Crenshaw, here in Cut 2, continues on with that point and makes a good point and calls for reasonableness and a reasonable debate on these on these items, is what he said.
What I hear a lot is you don't like what he says, and sometimes, okay, but and you don't like we have policy disagreements, but you're saying undermining democracy. And I want to caution us because those are very bold words. If we have policy disagreements, let's focus on those policy disagreements. And I'll be happy to discuss those at any point. But this is what I've been getting at kind of all week, which is we tend to go right at the jugular, right? We say you're undermining democracy, you're a bad person fundamentally. That's not always true. We have policy disagreements on a lot of these things.
I thought he was just well-spoken there. I thought he was a good voice of reason there. He's basically saying, and I think he's saying this to both sides, that we have to choose our words a little bit more carefully, that when we say things like undermining democracy or attacking the freedom of the press, those are strong, bold words, and maybe they're too strong when we're really just having disagreements on policy or style. So as Gina Cervetti was talking about in the last segment, the stock market has taken somewhat of a dive in the past couple of days. It's been kind of volatile for the past couple of months, but what's happened in the past week or so has had a lot of people concerned. The S&P 500 dropped 48.84 points. The Dow dropped 551.80 points yesterday. Big declines in the past couple of days, so a lot of people are wondering and asking the question, are we headed towards another recession? Is this a sign of something coming that's worse than just a volatile stock market? Well, Trump's chief economic advisor, Larry Kudlow, was asked about this yesterday, and he says, no, there are no signs that we are headed towards recession. This is what he said.
Basic economy has reawakened, and it's going to stay there. I mean, I'm reading some of the weirdest stuff, how recession is around the corner. Nonsense. My personal view, our administration's view, recession is so far in the distance, I can't see it.
So he's saying recession so far in the distance. Now, Goldman Sachs had a big report that came out this week that predicted that growth next year would slow to 2.5%. It's at 2.9% this year, and would go down to 1.6% by the year 2020. So they're saying it will slow, but they are also not saying that we are headed towards recession. I doubt that we are headed towards a recession anytime soon. We might be headed for a slowdown. I've been hearing for the past few years that we're headed towards another recession. I've been hearing for the past few years that we're not going to see the economic growth that we have been seeing this year. I think the tax cuts are working. I think the economy is growing. The stock market is volatile. A lot of that has to do with what the Federal Reserve is doing. But I wanted to make a bigger point about the market, a big point that a lot of people aren't thinking about. You know, one reason why the market is turning downward is because of the tech stocks, Apple, Google, Facebook. I keep hearing over and over again for the past couple of years that these companies are monopolies, that they are so big that the government needs to really start to regulate them more or even break them up. You know, trust busting like Teddy Roosevelt did back in the day. And that they're so big and such big monopolies, we have to do that. I think this week is kind of proof that these are not monopolies. That, believe it or not, even the big companies like Google, who seem too big now, are vulnerable to the market like a lot of other companies. I remember growing up in the 90s when people were talking about Microsoft being a monopoly, and the government even got involved. Of course, then Apple came and competed with Microsoft, and Microsoft isn't what it used to be. I remember just a decade or so ago when everyone was saying Walmart was a monopoly. Walmart is dominant. Nothing can take out or take on Walmart. But then when you look at Walmart today, what is Walmart doing? Well, Walmart has basically remodeled most of their stores, revamped a lot of their stores and their website. They're adding delivery. They're adding scan-as-you-go technology. They're adding all of this different stuff. You can order online and pick it up at the store. Why are they doing all that? Why are they doing all that? Well, they're doing all that because of Amazon. Amazon has come in and competed with Walmart, and that competition has forced Walmart to be better. You know, if Walmart was just a big monopoly that nobody could take on, they could just let their stores stay how they are and keep doing things as how they are, and nothing bad would happen. But they had to change. They had to adapt because the market is working. Not only that, but Google. Google used to own ad buying on the internet. They still basically do. But they don't own it as much as they used to. Now, why is that? Because, well, Facebook and Amazon are competing in the ad buying sphere, which has taken some of Google's market share. There's competition there as well. Not only that, but Amazon is trying to better their business because they still have to compete. Compete with who? Well, they also have to compete with Walmart and places like Home Depot, which have been doing well because they have vamped up their e-commerce, but they still have the retail space of the stores. The main reason I bring this up is because I keep hearing the Bernie Sanders of the world, the left of the world, saying these companies are such huge monopolies that we really need to start getting involved and break them up and do this receivership. The market doesn't work. In a way, even though the stock market's had a downturn this week, it's almost proof that the market is working, that there are market forces out there, and that these big companies are not monopolies and they still have to compete. 407-916-5400. You can text to 23680 where standard message and data rates apply. We'll get to your calls and texts next. It is 6:49 here on Good Morning Orlando. So we were just talking about the stock market taking a dive, and some people are wondering, is recession coming or is economic growth at least slowing somewhat? Larry Kudlow, the president, yesterday said, no, the economy is still really strong. Even most economists that I've been reading lately say the fundamentals of the economy are still really strong. And then I talked about how these big tech companies are still vulnerable to market forces, even though some like to claim they're monopolies. Let's go to calls here. Let's go to Alan. Alan, how are you doing this morning?
Hey, good morning, Yaffee. 3 really quick ones for you. Number one is, how do you like that big chair? And that was the first Phil and Bud's chair. Second, as Bud was here, I heard you say, I can remember, and I thought, millennials don't talk about being, I can remember. That's a sign of oldness.
I know, I'm getting old. It's already happening.
To me, well, you're getting older, not older. Anyway, thing I was kind of observing, I really enjoyed your astute observations, and that's one thing I really like. I think Bud's got a good crew of people, and you're one of them. But
thank you.
Is that it's amazing how I'm watching to see if this is going to have a theory. You know, we've had a change in the House, and the House is already saying, no, we're going to start doing all this and attack Trump for here or there. And it seems like there's a parallel in the stock market every time we hear from Pelosi and others that, you know, we're going to change and we're going to overturn and we're going to do this. And it seems like that 2 years ago when the House and Senate and the White House were controlled by Republicans, we saw the economy with deregulations, everything turn around and grow like it's never grown. And now we've got this like instant brakes put on in that the House side of the political side is saying, we're going to stop this, this, and this. I'm going, wow, I wonder if there's going to be a direct correlation between these two.
Well, it's really possible. It kind of depends what happens. And I appreciate your call, Alan. I will say this. There were a lot of economists who feared that the stock market was going to take a dive after the midterm, the day after, because Democrats winning. That did not happen. The one good thing about what happened at the midterms is the Republicans still hold the Senate and the presidency. So it could be gridlock, not necessarily Democrats taking over. And with gridlock, that still has an air of stability in it. And some economists like gridlock. They like that stability. Let's take another call here. Let's go to John in Orlando. John, what's your take this morning?
So you were talking about the big tech giants, Amazon, Facebook ads, and so forth. And I was just, thoughts coming to me. I've written a book about this kind of stuff, studied a lot. A lot of income and revenue to these big companies, especially Amazon, it comes from the government.
Especially recently.
UPS, postal services, right? And now, the guy who's in charge of it, is it Schmidt? I can't remember his name now. He's doing contracts with the CIA. So these are big government contractors too. And it's scary what's going on. We can't really say this is a free market working because there's forces of coercion of large amounts of money. Even that goes through the welfare system, amounts to hundreds of billions of dollars that flows into these big companies through government subsidy. And they jump through hoops to do what the government wants them to do.
Well, John, I would actually say you really make a really good point there, because he's basically talking about crony capitalism, and there's no bigger example of crony capitalism than Amazon recently and the massive subsidies that they are getting for putting their new headquarters in New York and close to Washington, D.C. I mean, massive subsidies. Some of them are tax breaks, but others are basically subsidies and investment in infrastructure and all that. And really it was unnecessary, because I guarantee you Amazon was going to put their headquarters there anyway because of the strategic locations. But you're right, crony capitalism is a problem. But you make a good point as well, because a lot of these companies that are said to be monopolies, one reason they get so big to get almost that monopolistic power is because they are in bed with the government in a lot of cases. If you really do want a free market, get rid of all of these subsidies and have a true playing field, have low tax rates and low regulation for everyone. Don't give special favors to certain companies, and we'll have an even freer market than what we have now. That being said, there are still market forces at work in the economy that even Google and the Amazons have to look at. They're not just total monopolies, in my opinion. Yes, and this is Yaffee filling in for Bud. You can follow me on Twitter at BeyondReasonR, or follow my podcast on the iHeartRadio app. Just search for Beyond Reason Radio or anywhere podcasts are available. So yesterday, and we were talking about the fact that what do we do with Saudi Arabia? Well, Trump made a decision yesterday in the afternoon. He put out a statement basically saying America first. That's how he started it. And saying he wants to keep the good relationship with the Crown Prince and with Saudi Arabia. He says representatives of Saudi Arabia say that Jamal Khashoggi was an enemy of the state and a member of the Muslim Brotherhood, but my decision is no way based on that. This is an unacceptable and horrible crime. That's what Trump said in a statement. He says King Salman and Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman vigorously deny any knowledge of the planning or execution of the murder of Mr. Khashoggi. He says, we may never know all of the facts surrounding the murder of Mr. Jamal Khashoggi. And in his statement, he talks about how he wants to keep the arms deal because it's good for America and it puts America's interests first. He expanded on this, talking to the press yesterday at the White House. Here it is.
The CIA has looked at it. They've studied it a lot. They have nothing definitive. And the fact is, maybe he did, maybe he didn't. If you look at Iran, what they've done, they've been a bad actor. You look at what's happening in Syria with Assad, with hundreds of thousands of people killed. We are with Saudi Arabia. They're buying hundreds of billions of dollars worth of things from this country. If I say we don't want to take your business, if I say we're going to cut it off, they will get the equipment, military equipment and other things from Russia and China.
So he actually makes a good point there about Iran and about the military equipment. But we all realize that the first part is nonsense, right? I mean, I'm not saying that to bash Trump or anything. I'm just saying that this whole we don't know whether the government was involved or not. We know.
Yeah, that's complete and utter nonsense.
We know. The CIA knows, Secretary of State knows, and Trump knows whether the government did it or not. I mean, I don't know for sure, but I'm pretty sure they know. And the evidence is pretty overwhelming that the government, that's the Crown Prince, was involved. In fact, Lindsey Graham also commented on this, and he's been kind of a backer of President Trump, a big backer of President Trump as of late, but he disagreed with Trump on this one. This is what he said yesterday.
I'm not going to turn my back on this guy. We've got a historic opportunity here to tell the people in the Mideast there's a new sheriff in town. If you disrespect us and you trample over civilized norms, you're going to pay a price. If you want to keep MBS, that's your decision to make, Saudi Arabia. As long as you make that decision, you're going to have a hard time with me. If you want to replace him with somebody who's not crazy, that would be a good move. So I'm not going to look away at what MBS did. I think he did it.
So that was Senator Lindsey Graham. Now, Lindsey Graham is obviously a hawk when it comes to foreign policy, so it's not too surprising what he said there, but he makes a lot of good points. Rand Paul went even further. He said in some tweets yesterday, he said the president indicates that Saudi Arabia is the lesser of two evils compared to Iran, and so the U.S. won't punish Saudi Arabia for the brutal killing and dismemberment of the dissident in their consulate. Rand Paul then says, I disagree. Says we should at the very least not reward Saudi Arabia with our sophisticated armaments that they use in turn to bomb civilians. Then he tweeted out in a pretty bold statement against Trump. He said, I'm pretty sure this statement is Saudi Arabia first, not America first. Says I'm also pretty sure John Bolton wrote it. This is a tough situation. I know I paused there because I understand where President Trump is coming from. Trump is looking at this, though, more as a transactional deal between two countries rather than putting American ideals and values first. There was none of that in his statement yesterday. Is that the right approach? We did put a businessman as president of the United States. I'm not so sure. What is your take? 407-916-5400. You can text to 23680 where standard message and data rates apply. We'll take your calls and texts next. It's 7:18 here on Good Morning Orlando. All right, bunch of texts coming in on what Trump should do with Saudi Arabia. Did he make the right move? I've got people on both sides of this issue, but I want to take a call first here. I've been waiting a little bit. Brad from Winter Park. Brad, what do you think of Trump not taking stronger action against Saudi Arabia?
Well, I'm surprised at all these political leaders and giving all their own opinions like Rand Paul and Lindsey Graham and even Mitt Romney. These guys should know better, and they should understand that everyone from Nixon and his dealings with Mao, of course, Mao makes this crown prince look like Mother Teresa, if you know your history. Obama dealing with Iran, and Iran has assassinated and killed people all over the world. Mm-hmm. And even when Obama spent the weekend with Raul Castro, another bloody dictator who murdered people, and you know, it just goes on and on and on. And this isn't whataboutism; it's just factism is what I like to call it. It's just so people will know that there's a lot of fake news out there because they're not mentioning, and obviously they're going to mention only things that are against President Trump, when we know in reality that this is just par for the course on the world stage, things that the president has to deal with. Well, and Trump made an excellent point that Iran's just going to get their billions of dollars of weaponry from other countries if we decide to
Saudi Arabia would, yes.
Yeah, Saudi Arabia, that's it.
And you're right that he's not the first president to play footsie with Saudi Arabia. This has been going on for decades on both sides.
Oh, yeah. But do you find it interesting that a lot of people that should know better are just sticking with their guns when they're smart enough to know?
Well, when you say should know better, people like me criticized Obama for the moves he made with Iran and Raul Castro and others. So, I mean, we just say this is normal par for the course, or should we say maybe we deserve better?
Well, you can say we deserve better, but being a realist, you have to understand over one supposed enemy of the state, Muslim Brotherhood, this was obviously a killing, we know that, or do we change direction and lose billions of dollars and let Russia and China now have those contracts over this? Okay. Or, you know, are we going to be real about it? You know,
you make a good point, Brad. I appreciate it. I said yesterday that the idealist side of me just wants to cut, you know, everything, all arms deals with Saudi Arabia and everything. But the realistic side of me says that's probably not practical. We have to keep some kind of pretty good relationship with Saudi Arabia because of the situation in the Middle East.
I mean, we're talking about this being the same as when other presidents have messed with dictators and so forth. But is it really? We're talking about they chopped up an American citizen.
Well, he wasn't an American citizen. He was a Saudi citizen.
Well,
he was an American resident.
An American resident.
He was living in the U.S., but he was
working for an American journalistic.
Yeah.
Blah blah blah. But they chopped him up, and we have evidence of that. That doesn't make it any different.
Yeah, well, I mean, though other dictators have done similar things, no doubt, but we have direct evidence, and he was an American resident. That is a big problem. And, one person said, basically, who cares about Jamal Khashoggi? He was not an American and was pro-Muslim Brotherhood. I just don't think we can ignore the chopping up of an American resident who was writing for the Washington Post. And even Trump's not ignoring that. Even in his statement, he condemned the action of that. The thing is that, and another text said, what's so special about this guy? It's not about the person necessarily. It's about the idea of attacking someone who is a prominent American resident. And we can't just ignore that.
I mean, that just, all of that just...
And even Trump didn't ignore it, but the thing is, Trump looks at this almost like a business transaction.
That's exactly
how his mind is. And some people think that's what you have to do in these situations, and I totally understand that. I'm just the kind of guy who wants the president to at least say and put forward the ideals of America, the ideals that America puts forward across the world. At least put that in a statement. The Wall Street Journal editorial page had a great point today. They said the bloody realities of the Middle East and the clear threat from Iran, which Mr. Trump described in his statement, give any U.S. president some latitude in forging a policy toward the region that reflects America's interests. But we are aware of no president, not even such ruthless pragmatists as Richard Nixon or Lyndon Johnson, who would have written a public statement like this without so much as a grace note about America's abiding values and principles. It says Ronald Reagan especially pursued a hardline, often controversial foreign policy against Soviet communism, but he did so with a balance of unblinkered realism and American idealism. And I think they make a really good point. And that's basically the point I'm making, that we can't just look at these things like business transactions. We are putting forward an idea across the world, and we have to stand up for those ideals. Otherwise, it will hurt us in the long run.
Yeah, we have to remember. We have to remember, American exceptionalism is not only our economic ability. American exceptionalism falters into all different aspects of our lifestyle.
Exactly. So since it's the day before Thanksgiving, I wanted to tell you about something from our history that a lot of people don't know about. When they think of Thanksgiving, they usually think of the Pilgrims and the Native Americans, which makes sense. But I want to tell you about the first Thanksgiving proclamation that happened in this country. I wrote this in a blog a few years ago, and I try to bring it to you guys every year. It happened in the year 1777. The Congress of the states, who recently declared independence from the British, they're meeting in a town called York, which is about 100 miles from Philadelphia. Well, why are they meeting there? September of that year had been a brutal month for George Washington and his army. After losing the Battle of Brandywine in Delaware on September 11th, the British would capture the capital of Pennsylvania, which is Philadelphia. The Congress had no choice but to flee, and they ended up in York. With all of this bad news, the Congress decided to have a secret meeting to determine whether there was still any hope of success against the British. There is no doubt that many there thought that it was best to cut their losses and try to negotiate a peace with the imperial British nation. Who could blame them? But one man decides to stand up and encourage the Congress to continue the fight. His name is, of course, Samuel Adams. Now, most people today think of Sam Adams. When you say Sam Adams, they think of the beer brand Samuel Adams. But Adams was actually one of the most influential people of the Revolutionary period. His group, the Sons of Liberty, would become the main protest group that would lead the people of America from mere complainers of the British to fighting for freedom against the British. Talking about the Sons of Liberty. Adams' speeches for liberty would convince many Americans that it was time to be independent. So at that secret meeting in Congress, Samuel Adams was there. Things might have seemed hopeless, but his words would become a rallying cry that would encourage everyone who believed in freedom and independence to fight on. This is what Samuel Adams says when he stands up at that meeting. He says, "Let us awaken then and invice a different spirit, a spirit that shall inspire the people with confidence in themselves and in us, a spirit that will encourage them to persevere in this glorious struggle until their rights and their liberties shall be established on a rock. We have proclaimed to the world our determination to die free men rather than to live as slaves. We have appealed to heaven for the justice of our cause, and in heaven we have placed our trust." This is Samuel Adams speaking. "Numerous have been the manifestations of God's providence in sustaining us. In the gloomy period of adversity, we had our cloud by day and pillar by night. We have been reduced to distress, and the arm of omnipotence has raised us up." He says, "Let us still rely in humble confidence on him who is mighty to save. Good tidings will soon arrive. We shall never be abandoned by heaven while we act worthy of its aid and protection." After that speech, the Patriots would fight on. They won a major battle in Saratoga in late October that would help change the course of the war. On November 1st, after receiving the good news at Saratoga, Congress adopted a report drafted by none other than Samuel Adams. The report declared Thursday, December 18th, a day of thanksgiving to God. Particularly, this is what Adams said, particularly in that he hath been pleased by so great a measure to prosper the means used for the support of our troops. It was the first Thanksgiving proclamation in the history of America. That's right, the first Thanksgiving proclamation in the history of America was a proclamation for a day of thanksgiving to God. He says, it was the first Thanksgiving proclamation. "I bring this story to you so that you remember this Thanksgiving, whom our thanks goes out to. Our founders understood that in order for us to succeed as a nation, we need the help of Almighty God. Times are tough. Times are especially tough now for many different reasons. But if we appeal to God, we will be able to overcome any obstacle. Remember to thank God for everything you will enjoy on Thanksgiving, including your family and your country. Thanks be to God that He has blessed our nation, and may He continue to bless us for generations to come." That is my message for you on Thanksgiving. Most people don't know that story. The first Thanksgiving proclamation in the history of this country by Samuel Adams, a thanksgiving to God for what He did for us. Really interesting story. All right, we have the Rush Morning Update coming up next, and Orlando's news, weather, and traffic in just 2 minutes. News Radio 93.1 WFLA. Yes, and this is Yaffee filling in for Bud here on Good Morning Orlando on News Radio 93.1 WFLA. Of course, you can still get us on AM 540 and also on the iHeart Radio app. Just search for News Radio 93.1 on the iHeart Radio app. We are also on HD Radio 107.7 HD2 if you have an HD radio. So we have a lot to be thankful for you have a lot to be thankful for if you live in the United States, especially if you live in America today. Because in the last 50 years, things in America have gotten a lot better. I know sometimes we think doom and gloom with today's world and what's happening to our country, and it's understandable sometimes. But I wanted to look at the positive side of things and how America has gotten more prosperous and how your quality of living has gotten a lot better in the past 50 years. I got this from Ronald Bailey at Reason.com. says the living standards of Americans have vastly improved during the past 50 years, with the quality of available consumer products steadily rising even as their prices have steeply fallen. It says in 1968, Americans could buy a top-of-the-line 19.3 cubic foot refrigerator for about $500, $499.95. In 2018 dollars, that would be $3,695. Today, consumers can purchase a 21 cubic foot Kenmore with external water and ice dispenser for $1,000 at Sears. That's a 73% price drop in real terms. It says the downward trend in television prices has been even more dramatic. In 1968, an Admiral Color 23-inch TV cost $350. That's about $2,586 in today's money. Consumers had to walk across the room to switch between 3 national networks. Best Buy now sells a 24-inch smart TV for $139.99, nearly a 95% price reduction. It comes with a remote as well as instant access to more TV shows, internet programming, and films than a person could watch in a lifetime. Here's another example of how things gotten much better for us in this country in the past 50 years. A 5,000 BTU air conditioner in 1968 was advertised at $99, which is $800 in 2018 dollars. Walmart will sell you a Frigidaire 5,000 BTU unit for $129, amounting to an 84% drop in price. It gives many different examples in this article. Calculators, microwaves, so many different things that show that materially prosperity in this country has grown exponentially in the past 50 years. So if you are living in 2018 America, you have a lot to be thankful for, even if you don't sometimes realize it and maybe take it for granted. So think about that this Thanksgiving. So this news broke yesterday, and it's actually not too surprising. It's somewhat predictable. But a San Francisco-based federal judge who was appointed by President Obama, he issued an order barring the Trump administration from enforcing the asylum restrictions that Trump announced on November 9th. This judge was U.S. District Judge John Tiger. He ruled that the president had unlawfully attempted to rewrite congressional law. Now, President Trump was not happy about this, obviously, and he reacted to this to reporters yesterday. Paul, would you go ahead and play cut 2 for me? Paul, Trump cut 2 for me.
People should not be allowed to immediately run to this very friendly circuit and file their case. And you people know better than anybody what's happening. It's a disgrace.
I have to say Trump has a point, because this is exactly what happens. You know, our attorney, Jeff Kaufman, last week was talking about this. What happens is you have these groups, and what they do is they go judge shopping, basically. So they go around and they try to put forward a case in front of a friendly judge who they believe will rule on their side. And that's exactly what happens, especially with this court involved. And what this court did is kind of unbelievable, because they basically barred another branch of the government from taking action that's within the executive branch's duties. Now, what this judge claimed is by temporarily prohibiting illegal aliens from seeking asylum and requiring that asylum be sought at official ports of entry, the president imposed conditions that Congress has expressly forbidden. That's what the judge says. Except the judge is wrong. To the contrary, Trump, he was acting to a sweeping grant of legislative authority of the immigration laws, which the Supreme Court held only 5 months ago, by the way, that vests the president with power to suspend entry and impose entry conditions when, in his judgment, the national interests require it. As Andrew McCarthy wrote in the National Review, He says it's not a rewrite of congressional law. It's an action pursuant to congressional law, taken in order to respond to a significant security problem at the southern border. Under the terms of Trump's order, the restrictions lapse after 90 days, at which point the status quo is to be restored unless conditions on the ground warrant an extension. And illegal aliens can go back to filing fraudulent asylum claims whenever and wherever they please. So according to a Supreme Court ruling and according to what the law actually says, it is well within Trump's power to put this executive order, basically banning asylum requests if they are breaking into the country illegally. It's totally within Trump's power. So this judge, obviously a more liberal judge appointed by Obama, doesn't like what Trump does, and he just puts down this order. And what they do is they shop around for friendly judges. This happens all the time. And I agree with Trump that it's kind of a disgrace that it's this easy to do that. It's sort of a form of judicial tyranny, really. But I want to tell you why we need to be concerned about the caravan. Why it's good that we start taking tough action when it comes to illegal immigration. And I also want to say we have to have Congress work on this as well. We have to have Congress change the asylum laws, because I do believe that Trump was it within his constitutional authority to do what he did. But could always be a Democrat president in the future who could come and change it. That's why the laws have to be changed in Congress. It can't just be Trump putting forward an executive order, because another president can come in and change that willy-nilly. That's not a good thing. And Trump has been saying that as well. Trump has been putting forward the fact that this needs to be changed by Congress as well, and I agree with them. I'm going to tell you why we should be concerned about this caravan, why we can't set a precedent by letting all of these people in. 407-916-5400. You could text to 23680 where standard message and data rates apply. It's 8:18 here on Good Morning Orlando. So I know that many of my libertarian friends out there basically want open borders, basically want what they call the free movement of people. And I understand that many on the left basically want to let a lot of these people in who are claiming asylum. But I have to tell you, I don't think the majority of the American people, even those who are open to more legal immigration into this country, who don't agree with Trump on everything in immigration, I don't think the majority of the American people would support thousands of people coming into this country all the time, especially at once, coming in and claiming asylum, basically because they want economic opportunity. They're just not going to support it. There's nothing unreasonable with wanting to control your borders and control the population that comes into this country. It's not unreasonable. And I think a lot of people, even Democrats, are going to say, you know, we want people to come into this country, but we can't just have thousands of people from Central America coming in, breaking into this country and claiming asylum, and then basically just staying without showing up again in the courts. But there's another reason why we should be concerned about this and why Trump is right to do something to try to stop this flow. Now, the Department of Homeland Security Secretary Kirstjen Nielsen commented on this yesterday as well. This is what she said.
The majority of the caravan that we see is made up of single adult males or teenage males. In addition, we have identified over 500 criminals, to include known gang members, contained in the flow of the caravan.
There's some dangerous people coming in through this caravan. And we really shouldn't be surprised by this. One of the reasons why they're coming in through a caravan is because a lot of these people felt unsafe to come in by themselves or in small groups. They felt safer coming in as a caravan, because coming up through Mexico and coming across the border, there's a lot of nefarious people, drug traffickers, coyotes, sex traffickers, who have done some pretty bad things to some of these asylum seekers. And of course, those bad people are going to try to mix in the caravan. Now, another comment that I heard yesterday, I heard this on Fox News Radio, actually. There's a guy by the name of Bartolo Fuentes. He was some thought he was the main organizer of this caravan. He denies it. But he is definitely an activist from Honduras who supports this caravan and who's been an activist trying to help this caravan. He was asked, what happens after this caravan comes here and gets in? What happens next? This is what he said.
Yes, there's several already in the works. I've been seeing on social media, there's one talking about leaving in November, another one talking about leaving on January 15th, another one talking about leaving on January 20th. They're going to continue until the conditions change and people no longer have to flee Honduras.
When he says they're going to continue, what he's talking about is more caravans. That there are already more caravans in the works, grouping together, and they're going to keep coming and keep coming. You have to stop the precedent. There are over 9 million people that live in Honduras. 66% of that population lives in poverty. How many millions of people? Should we let all 5 million of those living in poverty into this country? Because those are the people that would want to come here. I'm not saying that we should just shut the border to everyone. But I think it's not unreasonable to try to stop the flow of illegal immigrants breaking into the country and those who are seeking asylum who are really not here for asylum. They're either here for nefarious reasons or they're here for mere economic opportunity. Now, the easiest solution would be to build the wall. But we obviously can't get that done right now, so we have to have other enforcement measures. By the way, the Customs and Border Protection, they found that last year, it's fiscal year 2018, so earlier this year as well, roughly 400,000 illegals were caught sneaking in between ports of entry in fiscal year 2018. Another 125,000 presenting themselves at the port of entry. They say they've caught about 50% of those who illegally cross the border. So that means that about 400,000 people were not caught and got in this country. That's thousands of people in 1 year trying to get into this country. That's too big of a flow. This country has to be able to control its borders and has to be able to know who's coming in and out. And I don't think that's an unreasonable thing to want. We're focused on the caravan right now because it's a visual. It's something we can see. It's something we can grasp. But there are hundreds of thousands of people coming in that are not a part of the caravan. And this is why I believe we need tough border security. Yes, and it is time for the sound judgment game once again for a great prize. And if you want to know what that prize is, well, Stephanie is going to tell you.
That's right. So today we have a great pair of tickets to the Trans-Siberian Orchestra Winter Tour on December 15th at the Amway Center.
All right, so that will be a great prize. If someone gets a wrong answer, you can call 407-916-5400. So yesterday, President Trump did the annual turkey pardon where he decided to pardon peas, the turkey that was named Peas. There was one named Carrots and one named Peas. He decided to pardon the one named Peas. Here is some audio of him joking about the pardon process. I want you to listen to that and then use your sound judgment to tell me, to the closest million, how many turkeys were killed and eaten last year for Thanksgiving. Here's the audio.
The winner of this vote was decided by a fair and open election conducted on the White House website. This was a fair election. Unfortunately, Carrots refused to concede and demanded a recount, and we're still fighting with Carrots. And I will tell you, we've come to a conclusion. Carrots, I'm sorry to tell you, the result did not change.
All right, so him saying a few jokes about pardoning the turkeys. The sound judgment question, though. To the closest million, how many million turkeys were killed to be eaten last year for Thanksgiving? How many million? Let's go to line one. Line one, how many?
43 million?
You said 43? Nope, that is incorrect. Not a bad guess, though. You're pretty close. Let's go to line four. Line four.
7 million.
No, too low. 43 million was much, much closer. Let's go to line three. Line three, how many million turkeys eaten last year?
40
46 million.
Oh, almost there, but not quite. Let's go to line two. Line two, how many million?
Hey, Yaffee, about 46 million.
46? No, you're very close, but no, that is not right. Let's go to line four. Line four.
49 million.
Nope, that is wrong. 46 was very, very close, almost as close as you can get. Let's go to line one. Line one, how many?
54 million.
No. 46 was very, 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 very close. Go to line two.
47.
No. Opposite direction. Let's go to line three. Line three.
45 million.
Yes. Exactly right. 45 million. Do you like turkey on Thanksgiving?
I do.
All right. Sounds good. What's your name? Where are you calling from today?
Name's Joe, calling from Orlando.
All right, Joe. Well, I'll put you on hold, and Stephanie's going to tell you can get that prize, and congratulations on that.
Another happy contest winner on WFLA.
All right, we have Orlando's news, weather, and traffic in just 2 minutes. News Radio 93.1 WFLA. So I understand now why a lot of people in the last segment for Sound Judgment were guessing 46 million. If you Google how many turkeys are killed each year for Thanksgiving, it says 46 million on Google. But I got my information for last year from Time Magazine that said about 45 million were killed last year for Thanksgiving. So that's just wanted to let you all know where that came from. I wasn't saying every year. I was saying last year. So there you go. It's still a lot of turkeys. So I really hope that everyone has a wonderful Thanksgiving. We're going to have special programming tomorrow and Friday. I will be back on Monday, and then Bud will be back after that. Paul, Stephanie, what are you guys doing for Thanksgiving? Anything special? Just going to see the family?
We're eating.
Well, this is true. We all know what I'm doing. I'm going to see the girlfriend at the girlfriend's house. Stephanie, what about you?
Drinking a lot of champagne.
Drinking champagne. So that's your drink of choice on Thanksgiving. Is that what you should drink on Thanksgiving, champagne, or does it matter?
I mean, you should drink that every day. Let's be honest.
Okay. This is a good point. Forgot who I was talking to. But is champagne the usual drink for Thanksgiving dinner?
No, we have bottles at my house for Thanksgiving.
Bottles of
hard liquor.
Oh.
Yes.
All right. All right. Well, I hope everyone has a wonderful Thanksgiving, and I'll end the show just like Bud does. God bless you, and God bless America, and I'll catch you guys next time.